I know there are a few people who are enjoying the toilet services here. So they keep going out every now and then. I think I've seen Matthias, Ayub, every 5 minutes. They're saying they're pressed and they're going to the toilet. So I hope everyone is back. And maybe for the next 1 hour or so, if we can avoid the toilet, I know it's amazing. You know, you're just seated there and things are happening. So Ayub, Matthias, please avoid the toilet for the next 1 hour or so that we can have this very important discussion. So thank you to Haki Africa, of course, for organizing this very, very important convening. And at a time when the continent is faced with a myriad of issues related to security and human rights. As practitioners who are on the ground, people who are dealing with these issues on a day-to-day basis, this is a very, very important subject that we need to engage with, we need to discuss so that we can move this continent forward. I think everywhere you look, Africa is rising. And we are the next, the next world order is African. And we have to take our rightful place in the world so that we can usher in a new dispensation of human rights and security that speaks to the issues that are pertinent to our well-being as Africans. So I've been asked to speak briefly in the interest of time. We were to have this discussion for about 20, 30 minutes, and I envy the panelists because then they get to respond to the questions and issues. But as a speaker who's just introducing the subject, you just speak and then it's other people who will be discussing and sharing their views. But hopefully I will be here, and if I'll be allowed also to respond, because I like the engagement, because the issues we're speaking to are issues that we are all living with. We are all, very much involved. If you're in this conference, please consider yourself as a key practitioner. And we hope that we will discuss this together. So my presentation, as I was requested, speaks to the NGO regulations in Africa, balancing national security concerns. Fujo is one of those who keeps rushing to the toilet. So he's bringing the microphone after we have said that, but it will also be captured. Thank you, Fujo. So I'm speaking to the issue of balancing national security concerns and the protection of human rights in relation to NGO regulations in Africa. And just to kick us off, we know that civil society has for very long been the moral compass and actually the early warning system for our democracies. It is civil society that is on the ground. It is civil society that raises concerns as soon as they emerge. It is civil society, for example, here in Kenya, Matthias, Victor, Auma, and others, who broke out the story of Shakahola, where over 400 Kenyans, lost their lives. Whether it's in Tanzania with the issue with the Maasais, whether it's End SARS in Nigeria and other places, civil society has been at the forefront. And we must take note of the important role being played by civil society across the country, across the continent. But as we say this, time and time again, we view the state, and it's unfortunate that Madam has left, because, working in that particular ministry and in charge of the legal affairs, it would have been an excellent opportunity for us to have this one-on-one discussion with her. But all the same, she said that her office is open, and we hope to engage with her as we continue on this discourse. So what we have seen across Africa is that governments increasingly frame NGO regulations through the lens of national security. They box civil society together with terrorism, foreign interference. They say, yes, these are people who are given money to destabilize this country. There's a lot of disinformation out there. Government particularly pointing fingers at civil society and, arguing that sovereignty, we don't want to be interfered with. I think the example of Tanzania, and we have our brothers and sisters here from Tanzania, is one perfect example. Belonging to the East African community, we're supposed to be one and the same. Yet when Kenyans try to cross, to go over to Tanzania to share and at least to learn, to give experiences and all that, they are detained, they are, deported, and in a number of cases, as we've seen with Boniface Mwangi and Agatha Twahire, they are tortured sexually and other ways. So these are some of the challenges that we keep seeing within our context. The next slide, just as an introduction. So if we look at, the Forbes Human Freedom Index for Africa, it places Africa in a very precarious situation. You see that in the whole continent, we are lacking the most free. The most free societies, the most free countries. The best we have is Tier 2. South Africa, Namibia, Botswana, and surprisingly, countries like Ghana also fall within that. And then you have the other tier, which is Tier 3, where you have Kenya, you have countries like Tanzania, Burkina Faso, Mali, they're trying. They are not completely down, but somewhere there. And then, of course, we have countries that are least free. Places like Ethiopia, Democratic Republic of Congo, Nigeria, is also listed as part of that. So we are saying that NGOs are vital for democracy. We can't run away from the fact that civil society plays that key role in enhancing democracy, enhancing human rights in our countries. Governments, as I said, they're regulating NGOs in a manner that defeats the purpose of NGOs working within our countries. And the challenge again is to protect citizens without shrinking the civic space. That is the bulk of this discussion. How do we protect citizens without necessarily shrinking the civic space? And in my presentation, I've focused on 3 countries, Kenya, Tanzania, and Nigeria. So if we look at Kenya, next slide, please. We're saying, yes, there seems to be progress. However, that progress is on paper in terms of the legal framework, in terms of policies, in terms of regulations. Very nice. The PBO Act coming into force, I think 2-3 months ago. And on paper, it appears as if Kenya is moving in the right direction. But the problem and the friction is in practice. I think today we can very comfortably say we have one of the most rogue internal security regimes in this country, led by an individual known as Murkomen, just splashing hatred and obscenity left, right, and center. It's really appalling that he's actually a lawyer by profession. And the things that he spews in public every other day are absolutely unacceptable. I think the other day we were discussing with the president of LSK and saying, we need to review some of these practicing certificates. People like Murkomen, Professor Kindiki, they must be held accountable. You can't shame victims, for example. The BBC documentary spoke about how young children, 13-year-olds, 14-year-olds, were being used by the sexual trade in Mai Mahiu. And then he comes and he says, those children were coached. We are investigating the journalists. Instead of investigating the perpetrators, you're investigating the journalists who brought the story to you. So yes, we have very good laws. We have what appears on paper, something that we can hold ourselves proud to, the Constitution and other initiatives. But when you go down to the practice, if you look at what is happening, Sabasaba was the bloodiest day ever in the history of this country when it comes to protests. No other protest has seen more people killed on one day than we saw on Sabasaba, 7th of July, 2025. Close to 49, that's close to 50 actually, 49 close to 50, were shot and killed on one single day by police officers. In the Gen Z protests up to now, the number is approaching 150. In just a period of 2 years, it's not 2 years, it's actually 1 year and 1 or 2 months. 150 people have been shot and killed, some of them clobbered to death. So if you look at the case of Kenya, the balancing national security and individual rights, it's really something that we feel, the next slide please, that we need to address. The PBO Act, as I said, promised modern rights-based regulations. There are delays in full implementation. The PBO Act was passed in 2013 or 11? 2013, and implemented 2025, 12 years later, you know? And, you know, these are issues that we need to understand why the delay. Counterterrorism often used to justify restrictions. Recently now we've seen the Ministry of Interior, again, the same Murkomen, shoot to kill orders, issuing shoot to kill orders, and publicly stating, telling the police in front of media and everything, that when they come for you, we will not cooperate. You know, openly telling the police, go and do what you want to do, what you need to do, and when they come for you, we will protect you. That is the sad situation that we are in. And this is something as civil society we need to put pressure. We need to tell them to their faces that the Public Order Act clearly stipulates that we need to notify the police. We don't need to get your permission. And the reason why we say 3 to 14 days is so that you prepare. So when you go, you present your notice, and they tell you, oh, we have intelligence that goons have been hired. That is why we are coming to you 3 days earlier. I have a constitutional right. Those 3 days are for you to deal with those goons. Make sure they are not there, so that I can exercise my constitutional guarantee, because it is in the Constitution, Article 37. So you don't do your job, you are the police, you know they are goons, you have intelligence, and then you're telling me, do not exercise your right because there are goons out there. So why do you exist in the first place? Why are you even there? You are supposed to protect rights. The Constitution is very clear, you have that obligation. So these are some of the issues that we are faced with. Suspensions, deregistrations, I think Haki Africa has been a victim of that, Muhuri, Auma, and others. Lesson, very clear, predictable rules will encourage compliance. So if you look at the Human Rights Index, it has been going down. For the last 7 years, we are now at the lowest ever, okay? And we will see in Tanzania and also in Nigeria, the same trend. So the continent where we are in presently, the NGO regulations and everything, it is stifling democracy. Every other day, situation is getting worse and worse. We go to Tanzania, the next slide. So with Tanzania, my main finding was that securitized regulations are becoming more and more, and the shrinking of civic space. I think we all know Tanzania is going for elections in the next 1 or 2 months in October, and the main opposition leader is presently behind bars. You know, so you even ask yourself, what is happening? I think I wanted to ask Madam a question when she said, you go to Rwanda, they have drums, you know, they have, you people are decorating the polling station, and you know, but what kind of a country is Rwanda? It is one of the most autocratic regimes in Africa. Even if you wanted to say, I don't want that decoration, you can't. Honestly, you can't. Rwanda under Paul Kagame, they are following critics even when they are out of the country. At least in other countries, when you say you're in exile, whether it's Tanzania or wherever you are, you can make your noise there and you can do whatever. In Rwanda, they follow you wherever you are. It is one of the most feared regimes in Africa today. So yes, you can sing nice songs and say, oh, the town is nice, and you know, people are singing. When you're going to vote, they are drumming for you. But are they doing that out of their own liking, or are they being forced? Because even when you say, I don't want to vote, they can come for you. We have Kenyans who are abducted here in Kenya, Rwandese who are abducted in Kenya and sent to Rwanda. You know, these are things that are happening in our continent, and we must speak to them, because as civil society, as we said initially when I started, we are the conscience of this society. So if we look at Tanzania, we're saying that, and we have brothers and sisters here from Tanzania who can also confirm this, mandatory registration, heavy reporting requirements. You know, the requirements are such that they are designed in a way that you can never meet those requirements, so that you purposely fail, and then the state can then make a decision. If they like you, they'll ignore that you didn't meet the requirement. If they don't like you, they can use that as an excuse to deregister you. Registrars and security agencies hold broad discretion. So it is not, you have to apply, you have 5 people, you have to give this document and this document, the ID and what. It is their discretion, they decide what you need to bring and how they will, give all those regulations and what. It is at the discretion of the registrars. So that makes it extremely difficult, especially if you want to be there to speak openly. Governance and election-focused NGOs mostly targeted. So human rights NGOs and what, if you want to go dig wells in Tanzania, you're most welcome. You can dig as many wells as you want. If you want to feed orphans, Vitali, I think even as we sing here, tuimbe hizo pia. Hizo vitu in Tanzania, if you want to do general, good work to buy clothes for orphans, you'll get registered. But human rights, Vitali goes there and says, I'm from a conference with Haki Africa, and I got this brilliant idea. I want to register an organization to do the same. Hey, in Tanzania, mama ni suluhu. Utajua ujui. Long vetting leading to delays and self-censorship, So we're saying generally for Tanzania, over-securitization narrows civic space. When you over-securitize, when you make it so difficult, so challenging, it shrinks the civic space because people then run away from that. And if you look still on Tanzania, just go back, as we saw in Kenya, Tanzania has had a seesaw, down, up, but currently in 2024, the latest, they're at their lowest ever. So the space is shrinking and it's getting worse by the day. So we go to Nigeria, and for Nigeria, we're saying compliance, inflation, and governance by exception. So they are deliberately making compliance difficult, so that they can make it a challenge for Nigerians to be able to operate freely, for the civic space to expand. I think Nigeria gave us one of the best lessons on security accountability with EndSARS. The Nigerians went out a few years ago and said, this killer unit, we don't want it. Too many Nigerians have lost their lives in their hands. They've killed, they've maimed, they've done so much. And they ran a campaign nationwide. Youths went out to the streets and said, enough is enough, we don't want this. And they ended up putting pressure on the government. And at the end of the day, the SARS killer unit police force was disbanded. And that paved the way for many other countries to follow. We have the Gen Zs in Kenya. We saw what happened in Madagascar after the elections were apparently bundled. We are seeing presently what's happening in Togo. The whole continent is speaking up and saying, enough is enough. We don't need this. In Tanzania, with the elections, in Uganda, Kenya, people have come out. In Cameroon presently, I think President Biya is going for his, is it 6th or 7th term? 7th term, and he's 94 years old. 94 years old, and he's vying for his 7th term. Museveni is going for his what term? I just know he's been in power for like 40 years. And he's vying again. So these are problems that we have in this continent. In Tanzania, Chama cha Mapinduzi, wanakiita? Yeah, wanaitwa Chama cha? They have another name. The Tanzanians have given them. Sijui, some funny, when I remember, I'll let you know. But they have been the only ruling party since independence in 1962. Sindio Vitali? They've never had any other party. That is the only party in power. So they changed their presidents. But remember in Kenya we used to say Kanuni, Mama na Baba. Everything starts with Kanu and ends with Kanu. Tanzania is still there. So we need to think through this. So in Nigeria, they have very strong corporate oversight and anti-money laundering and countering financing of terrorism measures are being used to stifle the civic space in that country. Compliance inflation, as I said, overlapping rules and multiple regulators. You have to report to this one, you have to report to that one. There are so many rules and regulations making it difficult for civil society to operate freely. Proposals for NGO commission raised concerns of overreach. This commission was going to regulate the sector. We have small grassroots NGOs often excluded by heavy requirements because the requirements are so many. Like in Kenya, we have justice centers. You can register with the social services. You can register a grassroots group if you want to do funeral committees. We have so many funeral committees. Tuliambiwa Professor Makau Mutua has been given a responsibility of heading a funeral committee of a funeral that has already taken place. Because that's what basically they're doing. People have already been buried and now they're told to hand over the money to people who it's already done. But these are some of the problems we have. So in Kenya, you might be able to easily register an institution, but that's very challenging, particularly for grassroots in NGOs. So the lesson, good laws fail if enforcement is inconsistent. You need to have a clear role. And if you look at Nigeria, they are now, 2019. So it has been okay there. But 2024, they are now at the 2024 last year, they are at the same level as where they were during their worst ever time in 2019. So these are some of the challenges that we're experiencing. So moving forward, what are the cross-cutting lessons? Security and rights are not incompatible. Actually, these two can go hand in hand. Discretion leads to risk of abuse. Do not leave so much to discretion. Those who are in charge of the NGOs, the rules and when we give them the discretion to make all decisions, it becomes challenging. Let's have very clear rules that they also know everyone is held accountable for. Predictable, digitalized processes reduce friction. So this is opposite of discretion. Have a very clear system of registration, of reporting that everyone understands. It is digitalized. You don't even need to be there. You can just key it in either through your phone, your laptop, and you're reporting. And then risk-based audits, blanket restrictions. This is something else. Those restrictions can just happen because I don't like Auma. So you give him restrictions that are unheard of, So we need to be standard and ensure that transparency beats censorship. So yeah, so for Africa as a continent, I think these are some of the examples that we need to go through. So how are we moving forward? Country-specific recommendations for Kenya, harmonize, of course, the PBO Act, set timelines, use audits, not caps. So for Kenya, I think we can make use of the PBO Act and see how best to ensure the implementation is good for everyone. Yeah. In Tanzania, replace plea clearance with transparency judicial review of suspensions. So in Tanzania, they have so many rules prior to registration. You have to do this, you have to give this, you have to give that. So what we are recommending is that get the organizations registered and then make sure there are enough reporting requirements, reasonable reporting requirements that will allow everyone to know what they're supposed to do. And for Nigeria, of course, streamlined regulators. Okechukwu is here. We will get also to hear more about this. Simplify small NGO compliance, and of course, publish enforcement statistics. What has the regulator done? What have they been able to achieve? And how are we going to move forward as a country? But of course, lessons, of course, can be borrowed across the continent. Moving on, principles for balance. Legality with precision. This is across the continent now. What we need to consider across board. Legality with precision, very clear, narrow laws that are speaking specific to what needs to be done. Proportionality, let it be proportional. Someone makes a mistake of not reporting and you're charging them $1 billion. So we have to be proportional. Whatever is being done, what's his name? PLO says you do not respond to a mosquito bite with a hammer. You'll hurt yourself. One-stop compliance, digital unified system. That is where the whole world is moving towards. Digital, So this idea of filling in forms, you fill in forms and then there's form A, I don't know, form B, you have to fill in form what and form what. You have to travel all the way from Kanu to Lagos to present your documents, and it can be done digitally. You can just put in your details online. That is the direction the whole world is moving towards. Independent oversights, appeals and remedies, even us as CSOs, we need to have our own local arrangements that also guide us. I think we had an NGO council, Mr. Mukoya. I don't know what happened to it. We used to have an NGO council which was made up of persons who are elected from civil society. And they would help in terms of guiding members. The way you have the media council, the way you have LSK, they regulate. So we also need to find maybe our own ways before asking the national or the government regulator to come in. But I think under the PBO Act, that one is addressed. So hopefully if we are able to implement the PBO Act, we should be able to get that. Partnership with security. NGOs as allies, not suspects. This is for the state. They have to view NGOs as allies. We are not their enemies. At the end of the day, we all want a better continent for all of us. And that is what we are all campaigning for. So hopefully we will be able to get that. So I think that in conclusion, any society that would give up a little liberty to gain a little security will deserve neither and will lose both. So that is a message that we need to send out to the state. We need to send out to all those regulators that yes, we agree and we accept that security is key and it is important for all of us. But we also have to appreciate that human rights are very, very, very important, and that each and every one of us deserves to live in an environment where human rights, freedoms, and liberties are guaranteed as much as security is guaranteed. I think I'll stop at that and allow the panel to now take over. Ayub, you're coming from the toilet again.
No. At the Kamal Hada yesterday, I was shocked. So I sent those pictures to my family members, and they said they will have to spend the night here. So you'll just send the brief here, because we are due for lunch.
Yes.
I open up the floor for Unezabaki. Ama you
No,
can still.
it's a panel.
No, we only have one panel after afternoon. Yeah.
There's a panel.
No, there's no panel.
Tumebadilisha.
Yeah.
Oh.
Unaweza tulia hapa for a few minutes, we go for lunch. But observation, comment, question? Yes. Red beret. Yes. 4, 5. Yes, you can take that. Yeah. Yes. Gen Z. Comment, question, observation, whatever.
I'm a millennial. Anyway, my name is Marion the Activist. I'm happy to be here. And Hussein is my big mentor. I'm so proud of the path that we've walked. In the interest of time, my brief of observation, or rather recommendation, is that from this forum we come out with a solidarity platform, whereby, because our issues are very similar, whatever is happening in Tanzania is what is happening in Kenya, the abduction and everything. What we come with a solidarity platform where whatever is happening in Rwanda, any other African defender can have a platform to amplify their voice. Whatever is happening in Tanzania, we are looking forward for a lot of injustices in Tanzania in the election time. If the opposition leader is already in prison, he don't have a chance even to vie or even campaign. Can't we have a voice, one voice from this platform, whereby we can amplify our brothers and sisters? Viva, comrade, viva.
Viva.
I rest my case.
Thank you, Marion.
The red beret.
Thank you so
She's
much.
called Tina.
Are you inspired by Bobby Wine? Hilda is here.
Oh, thank you. My question is, because we have seen where the Community Group Act It's being enforced. However, there is a lot of challenges in registration, especially with the groups and renewal, of course, of the certificates for the groups, because they are limiting whatever that these groups are supposed to do. And the naming itself, you're being told that you should not name a group as an initiative, as a human right. You should not do social justice. Whatever that they are telling you to do, it's just, as you said, for Tanzania, if you're going to dig holes, you're going to give out some clothes, then it's okay. But right now, as we are going, there is a lot of complaints from youth groups and local organizing. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Eric.
Okay, first of all, let me thank, I will say, for that spot-on presentation. And you were accurate, when it comes to Nigeria. I agree with your recommendation about the need to harmonize laws, ensure alignment between the Cyber Crime Act, the National Data Protection Act, and the Interception Regulation, law. And then you talked about what you said about the police, how they responded to the protests. It reminded me of course, you know that successive governments in Nigeria have proposed one NGO regulation or the other. Of course, civil society has always pushed back, which is why we haven't really they haven't succeeded. But of course, as we speak, some international NGOs have been expelled from the northern part of Nigeria, accused of aiding terrorists. And then you talk about NSAS, and the fatalities were denied. Initially, the Lagos State government, the state where it happened, said there were no killings. But of course, it set up a judicial panel which said a certain number were killed. But independent reports, including from Amnesty, showed that the killings were, the numbers were higher than what is being actually, And then when you talked about proportionality, you remember that the Nigerian government banned Twitter. Because the president, the one that died, Buhari, had made a threat on Twitter that he was going to deal with secessionist agitators in the language they understand. And he was talking about using military violence. And Twitter considered that as an abusive language and deleted it. And then he banned Twitter, which was denying Nigerians freedom of expression and access to information. And then, of course, I talked about multiple regulations, security law, cybercrime. Every day, activists, journalists are charged in court with frivolous counter-terrorism charges, cybercrime, public order. The Public Order Act was actually a colonial law, but the police hides under it to say that citizens must obtain permits before they can express themselves, protest. But the appeal court in Nigeria had ruled that provision was inconsistent with the constitutional provision for freedom of expression. Yet, the police continues to rely on that to ban public, protest and to require that citizens must obtain permits. And so on and so forth. Militarization of the civic space. The military is not, as I said yesterday, the military is in operation in all the states of Nigeria. And those military checkpoints are nothing more than avenues for harassment, extortion, and extrajudicial killing. So I'm simply endorsing what you said about Nigeria and that.
Thank you.
I don't know, I think Kenya or Nigeria, I don't know who.
Yeah.
Yes, Eric.
Very good. Yeah.
Thanks for saying.
So you had how many questions so far? One?
Three.
Three questions.
Marion, Tina, and Okechukwu.
Thanks for saying. That was quite powerful.
Thank you.
I'd just like to draw your attention to what Tina said.
Yeah.
But then in the bigger version of what are these soft laws that we need to be aware of that still government will use to constrict? They will allow registration, but then bring in some soft laws. For instance, if you look at the public participation law that's been proposed, looking at how do you zone protests, that is something to think through. But the other thing is we have the Kenya Information Communications Bill that has more surveillance that allows even KRA into your space. The problem is we may not be aware of this. What do we do? What kind of strategy do we need to employ? The second bit of that is let's look at SLAPs, the strategic litigations that government then makes sure that people like you are constantly in court and you have no time to do any other thing. So they will register you, all right? But then make sure that you can't work. You are either in Milimani court or you are in Arusha. It's deliberate. Is it that the government will be registering and keeping you busy from the main business that you want to do? And lastly, I'm thinking is looking at your work, specifically the work that you do, and the accountability processes of people in power and those who may lose power tomorrow. Are we in a position to document some of these things and then bring them later on board and say, while you are a president, we couldn't deal with you. But now that you are not, is it possible that we can? Thank you.
Thank you. I
think I just have a last one before you answer. Allow me. And just looking at two things. One, my concern is on the independence of these authorities when they rely on civil society for financing. I know in some meetings, PBOA have actually asked the donor community to support their work because they're not well financed by government. And in the same breath, you will see donor organizations that are attacked. When after some few interactions probably, and you see how money is playing as under a lot of attack and threat from those that were named in the Ford Foundation letter, and just that threat silencing civil society. What is because even the public benefit author, the act feels it's protecting government more than civil society. So who protects civil society and ensures there is independence to do the work in a time where government is keen to curtail anyone that speaks against?
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think
7 minutes?
7 minutes.
Yes.
Oh, okay. I thought we didn't have time. But
Yeah.
very...
You know, our brothers and sisters from across the continent are enjoying our meals.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Trust me, we prefer fufu also to what we have here. But yeah, so I think they are very, very good contributions, and a good number of them were contributions. Marion, solidarity platforms, definitely. I think that this is something that we need to do. Sorry? The chair is here.
You can put on your microphone.
Okay, thank you very much for the opportunity, Dr. Joseph Wemako from Ghana here. So as a staunch human rights defender and a journalist, there's something I have realized based on all that we have spoken about in this forum, pointed out to what violation of human rights, and it cuts across the continent and the whole, talking about globally. Yeah. So, guys, this is what I have realized. Most of the security personnel or operatives, talking about the police, the military, and all that, one thing that I thought they lack is proper training on human rights. And that's why they commit all the grievous human rights violations that, been registered all over the world, including the African continent. So I am proposing that this forum, this particular conference, take up the initiative to push for a legal reform, or maybe a legal reform where maybe we'll get ECOWAS involved. There should be a pre-mandatory training for these security operatives, national security operatives. I believe once they are well educated, they can be able to handle elections management, protests, handling protests, and ensure that they are focused on ensuring respect for human rights, dignity, and justice. So, based on international standard, they are going to do this following an international human rights standard. So we can empower ECOWAS AU to come out with such a training, and we can push for that using our communique or whichever means that we can. Because if these people get the knowledge and then the character also, they can be transformed. And based on that, we can curtail, if not eliminate, human rights violations in our continent and beyond. Thank you.
I hope so. I hope so. And I think Dr. Wemako, merging your recommendation with what Marion has said, perhaps that solidarity platform, Haki Africa, leading us, could be an opportunity to approach the African Commission on Human and People's Rights, because they have a continental human rights mandate. And if we can approach them and come up with a continental requirement that all police officers must be trained on human rights, or the human rights-based approach to security, it's something that we can all benefit. But besides the training, I agree that, these solidarity platforms need to come up, and they need to come up now. If you listen to what Nigeria is going through from Okechukwu's contribution, these are things that we have and continue, to experience from time to time. I knew Nigeria banned Twitter, but I didn't know why. Now at least you've given us the background, because they banned Buhari's statement, and he got angry and decided the whole country, Twitter has banned mine as the president, now the whole country will do away with Twitter. And you can see how individuals place themselves before the nation, and that's very good contribution from Okechukwu. Tina, I agree. When Haki Africa was deregistered, and we went to follow up on registration, we had those challenges. Oh, you cannot call yourself, you can't have activism in the name, because Haki was an acronym: humanity, activism, knowledge, integrity. And they said you can't have activism. Why? Why can't you have activism? Activism is just an active citizen who just doesn't sit and you go out there and they're like, no. So then we changed activism to action. And we said, we are taking action, digging wells, We will also take action for orphanages and stuff like that. Like, yes, action is okay. Action is okay. You see, so there are all these regulations. You can't do this, you must do that. And this is a challenge. And what we need is that pushback. Don't accept that they tell you you can't do this, you can't do that. If need be, Muhuri was registered after going to court. 12 years after making the submission, presenting everything. And they said it has now gone to, those days it was NSIS. NSIS are investigating. So we will get back to you. For 12 years, they were investigating, and the organization was operating as a legally hosted by Kenya Human Rights Commission. Until one point, people decided we are going to court. We are suing the NGO Coordination Board for not registering. Even before the matter was heard for the first time, the certificate of registration came out. So you need to have that pushback. I know it's not easy. It requires more time, it requires resources, but for us to move the country or the continent forward, you have to, push back and say, no, this is not right. If I want to do human rights, I should be able to be registered to do human rights. So Tina, I think on that we are with you. Multiple regulations, I think Okechukwu, mainly you are giving the experience, the renditions. I think Kenya, I don't know if there's any country in this continent that is guilty of renditions more than Kenya. We have all sorts of people renditioned. Rwandese, Ugandans, Tanzanians, Nigerians. Kenya is so easy to just accept Turks. I think there were Turkish guys who were renditioned last year, yeah? People were at a conference, in Kisumu, Ugandans, and they came, they picked everyone and sent them back. So this is a problem we have in this continent. I think Rwanda also does that a lot in many different countries. So the question again is, what do we do? And it all boils down to what Marion had said. How do we come together? Because if we operate as in silos, different entities, it's easy to divide and rule and, shut down and stuff like that. But if we are to stand together and I hope that tomorrow we will have the workshop resolutions. If there will be action towards converging these efforts, consolidating the gains that we've had from the past, and coming up with a unit that can then push, these issues forward, I think it will be a very good outcome. So Nigeria, ICJ, Mokaya, totally with you on soft laws. The law, I think it's by Passaris, it is, zoning protests and saying you can protest anywhere else, but not the critical areas. Then why are we protesting? If we are protesting at Uhuru Park, you have to, it's called civil strife. You make the nation ungovernable. And we're not apologetic to that. We want to do that so that the government feels it. Ruto cannot go to State House because we're in the streets. Otherwise, if he's moving around, everyone is doing their business. What is a protest for? The protest is supposed to disturb the peace. You're not supposed to have just any other normal day. Otherwise, we can protest in our homes and we sit there and do nice stuff. But that's not the idea. I saw Chelimo in a protest the other day. She was at the forefront, and she was saying, justice for our Mashujaa on Kimathi Street, because the businesses have to shut down. The government has to feel the pinch. No taxes today. You're not going to earn. You lose hundreds of millions of shillings. That's the reason why we protest, so that the government can feel it, so then they can change whatever the people want to change. Now you give us these laws, you tell us you go and protest next to your mosques and churches, and you leave the offices of the state. That's ridiculous. So civil society, we need to push back. We actually want to protest outside parliament so that we can block those members of parliament from having that sitting, and they will lose their allowance for that day. So then they listen to us, because if they continue doing that, they're losing their money. So that, they can feel the pinch and listen to the cries of the masses. That's the purpose of protest. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense. So I'm with you on that, Mr. Okaya Kabisa, and I hope ICJ, with your expertise, you can really, really help us in this regard. That, protest law, we need to, have our inputs and resist all this. And I hope she truly gets recalled. Rejection, yeah, definitely. And I hope that we get there. Chelimo, the government, because they have the monopoly of resources, they do this a lot. IPOA, the investigative agency for our brothers across the continent, I hear there are only 2 IPOAs, or police oversight agencies in the whole continent, in Kenya and South Africa. No, the other countries don't have IPOAs. So what they do is they give money to IPOA, to KNCHR administration. The administration budget they have, they can pay rent, they can pay salaries, they can drink water in the office, tea, that government gives. But money to go out, to investigate, to follow up, and what, nothing. So if anything happens, the president will say, IPOA, their offices, they're there. They need to investigate. But you know very well you haven't given them money to investigate. KNCHR, the same. They have a budget to take care of their admin, but programmatic, nothing. So they're there to exist, for us to just see them that they are there. But then in terms of doing the actual work, and this is a deliberate move by the state, so that they have someone to blame, but when they actually know that that person cannot harm them in any way. But we hope that there will be that pushback. Clarice Oganga has been appointed as the new chairperson of the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights. We all know Clarice very well. She was with the United Nations Office of High Commissioner for Human Rights. She worked with this lady, Li Fang. She worked with who was before Li Fang and others and all that. So we hope that they'll be able to get that pushback. But the other thing we also need to ask these commissions is whether they can raise funds for themselves. so that they don't just sit and wait. Yeah, donors can come in, they can do joint projects, and hopefully be able to push that back. So, Daktari, I think we've combined that with Marion's issue, that we have to work together, and sometimes it's not just the training, it's a culture. As within our police service, we've inherited the colonial era police, you know, and they are there to oppress and to follow orders of whoever is up there. They are not there to serve the people. And that colonial era culture, we've never done away with it. The trainings that have come have further instilled that culture. You know, so I agree with you that we need to change that culture. It's not just about training on human rights, but to introduce the human rights-based approach to security. And if we're able to do that, I think we'll be able to move the continent forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Let's clap for him. Ama unataka Moi Era clap.
Pana. Thanks.
Thank you. Again, let's appreciate him. Hussein is a very instrumental gentleman in the field of human rights in Kenya, alongside the likes of Eric and those who champion for human rights and rule of law. So it's lunchtime. It's 40 minutes past 1. So we meet here at 2:45, an hour. I give you an hour and 5 minutes. I think that's okay. Yes, that's enough. So that we do our last session and see off this very beautiful day as we had done yesterday with day 1. So thank you so much. The good lady is out with the vouchers and she will direct you to the right restaurant. Prayer rooms are provided for. The washrooms are on your left side after you get out. And let's meet here at exactly 2:40 p.m. Thank you so much. Enjoy your lunch.